There is a kind of silence that is not the absence of sound, but the absence of noise. Not the world's noise, your noise. That constant inner hum, worries, judgments, unfinished conversations, the plans you rehearse 1,000 times, the voice that never lets you breathe. For most people, silence is impossible, not because life is loud, but because the mind never stops speaking. And yet, every ancient philosophy, every spiritual tradition, every master who reached clarity, they all agreed on one thing. A person who cannot create inner silence can never hear their real self. Today we're going to explore a path most people never dare to walk, the path back into yourself. Not the self you show the world, not the self that reacts automatically, not the self made from fear or ego, but the deeper one, the one buried under years of distraction, the one that's still alive, quietly waiting to be heard. Chapter 1. The Noise of the Modern Mind. There is a problem we rarely acknowledge. We treat thinking and noise as if they are the same. They're not. Thinking is deliberate. Noise is compulsive. Thinking solves. Noise drains. But the tragedy is this. Most people live entire lives inside a storm they never chose. Constant stimulation, endless scrolling, a mind jumping from fear to desire to memory to fantasy. No wonder people feel lost. They've mistaken the chaos inside their head for who they are. The Stoics had a name for this: mental turbulence. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind must be trained like a wild animal, because left alone, it devours its owner. Zen monks described it differently: the drunken monkey. A mind that leaps, shouts, panics, argues, blames, resists, never still, never quiet. And because it is never quiet, you never get to hear the truth beneath it. Chapter 2. Why Silence Feels Terrifying. Here's the paradox. Everyone wants peace, but almost no one can sit in silence for even 3 minutes. Why? Because silence forces you to confront the things noise was hiding. The unresolved emotions, the suppressed thoughts, the unlived life, the truth you've avoided. Noise is a shield, silence is a mirror, and mirrors can be terrifying. Chapter 3. What inner silence truly is. Inner silence is not the absence of sound. It's the absence of mental reaction. It is the ability to let a thought arise and not be dragged by it, to feel an emotion without becoming its hostage, to witness your mind instead of being trapped inside it. It is stillness, not empty, not dead, but alive, awake, spacious. The Stoics call this state ataraxia, unshakable calm. Zen calls it mushin, no mind. Christian mystics called it the quiet prayer. Different names, same destination. A mind so clear that your true self can finally breathe. Chapter 4. The Self Beneath the Noise. Most people believe they are their thoughts, that whatever the mind says must be true. But if that were the case, why do your thoughts contradict themselves? Why do they change with your mood? Why do they argue, fight, panic, exaggerate, repeat? Because thoughts are not you. They are events happening inside you, just like clouds crossing the sky. The sky does not become the cloud. The cloud does not define the sky. It simply passes through. The problem is, modern life trained us to stare at the clouds so long that we forgot we are the sky. And this is exactly why inner silence is powerful. It returns you to the one who sees, not the one who was dragged. Chapter 5. The 3 Sources of Noise. If you want silence, you must understand what creates noise. 1. The past that was never processed. Memories you buried, emotions you never confronted, they echo. Unfinished stories whisper the loudest. 2. The future you're trying to control. Fear projects scenarios like a broken film reel. The unknown becomes a monster your mind tries to predict. 3. The ego trying to protect its identity. Ego hates silence because silence reveals how fragile it truly is. Each of these layers creates noise, and most people spend their lives reacting to these echoes instead of observing them with clarity. Chapter 6: The first wall you hit when you seek silence. Here's something no one warns you about. When you first try to create inner silence, your mind will get louder. It will fight. It will resist. It will scream for distraction. It will tell you you're wasting time. It will offer you 100 reasons to get up. Why? Because you're breaking a lifelong habit, the habit of being unconsciously pulled by mental noise. Silence threatens the mind's old patterns, so they retaliate. This is normal. This is expected. This is the first gate. If you don't know this, you quit here. If you understand this, you go deeper. Chapter 7: Silence is not escape. Inner silence is not a retreat from life. It is a return to your center so you can face life with strength. A quiet mind doesn't run from problems. It sees them clearly. It chooses wisely. It reacts consciously. Noise makes you impulsive. Silence makes you intentional. Noise creates confusion. Silence creates orientation. Noise pulls you into chaos. Silence brings you back to yourself. Chapter 8: Where real silence begins. True silence doesn't begin when the world becomes quiet. It begins when you stop feeding the noise inside you. A thought appears, you don't chase it. An emotion rises, you don't drown in it. A memory returns, you don't negotiate with it. You simply watch. This is the shift. The moment when awareness stops merging with whatever arises and instead becomes the observer. Zen masters teach this through a simple image. A river flows, leaves fall on its surface, but the river remains untouched. Your mind is the river, thoughts are the leaves. When you stop grabbing the leaves, the water clears. Chapter 9: Silence is a skill. Many people believe silence is a personality trait, something calm, introverted people naturally have. But that's wrong. Silence is a skill, and skills are trained, just like strength, just like discipline, just like focus. And the training is simple. You learn to recognize when the mind begins to spiral, and instead of following, you step back. The Stoics called this the gap, the small moment between stimulus and response. Most people don't have this gap. Their reactions are instant, automatic, unconscious. Silence expands the gap until reaction becomes choice. And when life becomes a series of choices instead of automatic impulses, you regain control. Chapter 10: What silence reveals. When inner silence deepens, 3 truths slowly reveal themselves. 1. Most of your suffering was self-created, not because you deserve pain, but because your mind replayed the same stories endlessly. 2. Peace was never something you had to search for. It was always there, covered under layers of noise. 3. Your identity is more fluid, more spacious, more powerful than you ever imagined. You are not the reactive self. You are the awareness watching it. This is the moment many people describe as finally seeing clearly. The fog lifts. The mind unclenches. Life stops feeling like a storm and begins to feel like a landscape you can walk through with intention. Chapter 11: The Inner Pause. There is one exercise practiced across all ancient traditions, from Stoics to Buddhists to Christian mystics: the inner pause. A simple moment where you do nothing, say nothing, judge nothing, react to nothing. You just stop. Most people have never truly stopped in their entire lives. Their bodies pause, but their minds run without rest. This inner pause is like stepping out of a moving train and realizing the world isn't rushing. Only your mind was. In that pause, you begin to hear something subtle, a deeper voice, a calmer presence, a clarity beneath the noise. That is the beginning of your real self calling you back. Chapter 12. The mind's resistance to silence. When you finally begin to sit in silence, a strange thing happens. The mind panics, not because silence is harmful, but because silence threatens the structures that have controlled you for years. Old memories rise, random fears appear, thoughts speed up. The mind tries to pull you back into noise. Zen masters say this moment is like the last scream of a dying habit. The mind realizes it's losing control, so it fights harder than ever. If you don't understand this, you think something is wrong. You feel overwhelmed, so you escape back into distraction. But if you do understand it, you recognize it as a sign of transformation. The storm intensifies right before the sky clears. Silence isn't the problem. Resistance is. And once resistance breaks, a deeper calm begins to grow. Chapter 13. Clarity emerges. As the mind unclenches, the world begins to look different. You notice small things you never saw before. Expressions, pauses, details, shifts in the air, your own emotional patterns. It's not because the world changed. It's because your attention is no longer hijacked by internal noise. Every philosophy calls this state a form of awakening. The Stoics describe it as seeing things as they are. Zen calls it suchness, the raw reality without the mind's distortions. Clarity is quiet. Noise distorts. And when the distortion fades, life becomes simple again. Not easier, but clearer. Chapter 14. Emotional mastery through silence. Inner silence does not remove emotions. It removes emotional enslavement. Anger may arise, but it doesn't explode. Fear may appear, but it doesn't control. Sadness may surface, but it doesn't drown you. Why? Because silence creates space between the emotion and the observer. Space is power. An emotion felt consciously is an emotion mastered. An emotion reacted to blindly is an emotion obeyed. This is why ancient masters practiced stillness, not to feel nothing, but to feel everything without losing themselves. Chapter 15. Silence as a life strategy. Inner silence isn't simply a spiritual exercise. It's a strategy for moving through life with precision. When your mind is quiet, you make decisions that aren't based on fear. You speak only when necessary. You stop interpreting everything personally. You stop wasting energy on imaginary problems. You gain a focused presence that others can feel immediately. People often say, "I want confidence." But confidence is just clarity, and clarity is born from silence. A quiet mind doesn't doubt itself every minute. It doesn't create imaginary obstacles. It moves deliberately. This is why truly silent people feel powerful without trying. Their presence says what their words never need to. Chapter 16. Meeting yourself again. When the inner noise finally settles, you begin to notice something unexpected. A presence inside you that feels older than your fears, deeper than your thoughts, and quieter than anything you've ever known. It doesn't rush. It doesn't explain. It doesn't argue. It simply is. This presence is not dramatic or loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't chase validation. It waits. For most people, this presence has been ignored for years, buried under stress, identity, expectations, and noise. But once silence opens the door, you meet yourself again. Not the version shaped by society, not the version shaped by comparison, but the version that existed before the world told you who to be. This is the self that watches, the self that chooses, the self that does not panic, the self that knows. And reconnecting with this deeper self changes everything. Chapter 17. The Three Transformations. When inner silence becomes a practice, three transformations occur. 1. Your attention becomes sharper. You stop living in mental fog. You see what matters and ignore what doesn't. 2. Your reactions slow down. You don't explode, overthink, or collapse. There is a calm strength in your decisions that others feel instantly. 3. Your identity expands. You stop defining yourself through fear, failure, or past mistakes. You begin to sense a larger capacity within you. This isn't a spiritual fantasy. It's a psychological rewiring. Silence teaches the mind to stop rushing toward every impulse and return to its center. And from this center, your choices become intentional, your emotions become manageable, your presence becomes grounded. People around you notice it before you do. They can feel the difference between someone who is driven by noise and someone who walks with inner stillness. Chapter 18, What the Masters Teach. Ancient masters, Stoics, samurai monks, mystics, all taught the same principle. A quiet mind sees truth. A noisy mind sees illusion. This is why they meditated, reflected, wrote journals, observed breath, practiced stillness, not to escape life, but to face it with clarity. Silence reveals who you are. Noise hides it. And once you learn to cultivate silence on purpose, you stop being controlled by the world around you and begin to influence it. Not through aggression, not through domination, but through presence. A quiet presence is more powerful than a loud personality. Chapter 19, Maintaining Silence. Silence is not a one-time achievement. It is a maintained state. Here are 3 practices used across centuries. 1. The morning gap. Before you touch your phone, before you speak, give yourself 1 minute of conscious stillness. Just 1 minute. You'll be surprised how difficult it feels at first. 2. The inner pause. Whenever emotion rises, do not react immediately. Wait 2 breaths. Let the waves settle. Respond from clarity, not chaos. 3. The evening release. At night, write down the 3 thoughts that created the most noise today. Naming the noise weakens it. These tiny rituals slowly rewire your mind toward silence. Not forced silence, natural silence. The silence that grows when you stop feeding the noise. Chapter 20, The Final Message. Inner silence is not a luxury. It is a necessity for anyone who wants to live consciously. You don't need a monastery. You don't need hours of meditation. You don't need to escape society. You just need to remember that beneath all the noise, beneath the stories, beneath the fear and the expectations, there is a voice you have ignored for far too long, your real self, the one that doesn't shout, the one that guides quietly, the one that knows the path even when you don't. And when you finally learn to listen to that voice, you stop surviving and you start living.